no GMO crop trials can go ahead unless there is prior authorisation from the Secretary of State.
Nobody comes to this, as I'm sure you've discovered, with a neutral point of view.
So there are potential benefits to the use of GM crops.
Biotechnology, and this is the last point I want to make, is not just about transgenics.
These crops are safe.
Have we actually had the debate as to whether we want them at all?
Again, the criteria there is purely safety.
We are concerned that the risk is too high.
What are the sort of deeper ethical dimensions of doing this?
There's been direct action against many sites.
The time scale is so short.
But have we actually talked about whether this is the right thing on a more fundamental level?
And that science is uncertain, it doesn't deal in facts.
You have to produce products which the public wish to buy.
The first adverse effect that we get from GM crops will be a surprise.
And we were very concerned about it.
And as a result, you have a genetically modified plant with no foreign genes.
So mistakes are being made on a regular basis.
The government is very serious about taking forward a debate on GM issues.
The Wortley House Hotel in Scunthorpe played host to an important conference called by Environmental Assistance of Immingham and a group of residents from the Isle of Axholme in East Lindsey. The residents had become increasingly concerned about the planting of genetically modified or GM crops in their area, an area of considerable agricultural importance. Some parts of the Isle of Axholme still operate on a medieval strip farming system, which raises particular concerns regarding the contamination of non-GM crops. In the spirit of fair exchange, dialogue and education, it was decided that a conference offering information from all sides of the GM debate would be the most productive way forward. As an organisation, Environmental Assistance believes that access to balanced information is the key to understanding and awareness. It is only through the sharing of knowledge that a civilised debate around such an emotive issue as GM crops can be generated. Environmental Assistance offered a range of speakers reflecting all quarters of the debate. Environmental Assistance aimed to provide the information to allow residents to make up their own minds on the potential advantages or disadvantages of GM crops. The conference was opened by Environmental Assistance.
We're gathered here today because a little while ago, some time ago now, we were approached by a group of residents of the Isle of Axholme who were anxious about the planting of genetically modified crops within their area. They were concerned about regulation and they were concerned about any effects which may accrue to the environment as a result of this. So we responded by calling this conference today. We're very fortunate to be funded by the Awards for All. So I'll now ask David Grantham, who is the Director of Environmental Assistance, to set the scene.
So there are potential benefits to the use of GM crops. So given all those potential benefits, why are the concerns, why are the public concerns, given the nature of all those benefits? One perception, I think, is that these crops are somehow unnatural, either because of what they're doing and or because of the technology. And the people here today are far better informed than I to talk about that particular issue. But the issue of unnaturalness has then a bearing on another concern, which is if these methods, the crops and such are unnatural, is their behaviour predictable? And then it brings on the issue of the predictable consequences or otherwise of this technology. And you can understand it when you see headlines like this. This is in the paper at the weekend. But it's one of the reasons why we think it's very valuable to have this debate and to contribute to why it has a real role to play in development of GM in this country. So in setting up this conference today, we've designed it so that the first two speakers, Adrian and Julie, who represent the regulatory authority. Adrian effectively represents the regulator of GM crops in the UK, and Julie represents a body that advises government on biotechnology. Professor Moses, representing PropGen, and Sue Mayer representing GeneWatch. And the third speaker, Jean Turner, is representing local residents. So in that way, I would hope that we'd have sort of a balanced range of views presented to you for you to make up your own minds to ask these people further questions that are of concern to you. Then in the afternoon, we have a debate, an hour-long debate, where again, it's a further opportunity for you to air your questions, to discuss with these people that have been good enough to come along today, your concerns, and have them addressed on a one-to-one basis or in an open forum. So with that in mind, I'd like to hand on to our first speaker, if I may. Dr. Adrian Butt.
First point to make is that there are very strict regulations that govern the release of GMOs across Europe, and the directive, there's a European directive that actually lays the legal framework for this. The overlying principle here is that no GMO crop trials can go ahead unless there is prior authorization from the Secretary of State, in this case Margaret Beckett. Decisions are based entirely on safety and are based on the best available science, and that's why, of course, there's an involvement of ACRE. Needless to say, as far as the department is concerned, as far as the Secretary of State is concerned, these crops are safe. We would not allow them to be planted in Lincolnshire if we thought there was a serious risk to human health or to the environment. Now, the Aventis, for example, they will apply for a consent. But what they do is to submit a dossier, and they have to respond to a number of questions about what the recipient plant is, what the genes are that's going to be introduced, what the potential impacts are going to be on the environment. And this dossier is then circulated to other bodies. For example, English Nature. We seek their advice on whether English Nature have any concerns about this. As I mentioned earlier, all information is publicly available, and these crops can only be released if they are approved. So how do all these elements link up? Here we are. So here we have an application, goes to DEFRA. We circulate that application to other government departments. That could include, for example, the Food Standards Agency. It would go to CSL, Central Science Laboratory, who are responsible for monitoring release sites. On our behalf, there are eyes and ears to make sure that consents are complied with in the field. And so they have a duty to make sure that what is proposed is monitorable. The Health and Safety Executive are also, their advice is sought. In fact, their agreement is required before any release can go, because of the requirements of the directive. Safety to human health and the environment. Is the consent issued? Again, the criteria there is purely safety. It's not whether this is going to be a benefit to the environment, it's purely safety. We have, as far as the regulatory authorities are concerned and government is concerned, that is the #1 priority. The problems we've had so far is highly controversial. Some farms have pulled out. There's been direct action against many sites. But I must stress here that in most situations, although there has been damage, because they're collecting data at various positions around the field and at various times, most of the data has been usable. And there's been difficulty in getting sites for understandable reasons. And finally, you mentioned that debate was very important in terms of coming to some rational understanding of what the issues are and come to some conclusions. And I think many of you will be aware, and for those of you who aren't, that the government is very serious about taking forward a debate on GM issues. And that has started. We actually set up a website already, which you can find at DEFRA. And the idea is that what we want to do is listen to the concerns that people have and then feed those concerns into the general discussions and try and come to some understanding of the various positions and try and shed some light on the issues of the day in advance of the potential commercialisation of GM crops in the UK. Thank you very much.